Hello, and welcome to That Recording Podcast, the podcast of conversations inspired by all things analog recording. I am your host, Joe Montague, also known as... Are you that Beatles drums guy off Instagram? All you need is drums. Yes, that is me. And each episode I'll speak with a different guest from all avenues of the recording world. You can expect discussions on everything from the mentality and philosophy of recording right down to the nerdy gear talk and everything in between. With guests ranging from industry legends to current music producers, engineers, musicians and gear manufacturers. If you're like me and share my enthusiasm for hearing their stories and learning from their experiences, then this is the podcast for you. Don't forget to hit subscribe on your podcast player so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy this, please leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening. Obviously, 5 stars, please. And it really helps to grow the love for analog recording and helps me attract a variety of different guests. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show! Hello and welcome to another episode of That Recording Podcast. I hope you've all had a wonderful week. This week we're continuing the conversation with Chris Wilkinson from Balcony Recording Company, talk more about his time in Nashville and his internship with Vance Powell, as well as working at House of Blues. So without delay, here we go! That Recording Podcast is sponsored by Make Noise Pro Audio, the trusted source for new and used pro audio equipment. They also do repairs, so they are a veritable trifecta of audio accomplishment. Did you like that sentence? I was quite proud of that when I wrote that. A bit of, alliteration. There we go. Anyway, they have an incredible Instagram feed, and one of the things that I really love doing is every week they do a drop of the gear that they have had come in during the week. And I love scrolling through the stories, and there's usually 20 or 30 pieces that go up. And this is a bit weird, but I always play Guess the Price, because it's always really reasonable. And I must say that I am biased. I've been buying things from Make Noise for years. They're just such a great company. Obviously, I'm very grateful to them to be supporting this podcast, but I wouldn't be doing this if I just didn't think that they were brilliant. So do go and check them out at Make Noise Pro Audio on Instagram or makenoiseproaudio.co.uk on the interwebs. And on with the show! So we've got a slight link that we were at college. Well, actually, it turns out at the same time, although we didn't know. I didn't know you then. So we only met, 3 months ago or something like that. I think you were on the production course the year ahead of me.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's what we'd figured out, yeah.
Yeah. And then so how did you get from doing a music production course, which is a fairly logical step for, somebody who's got studio aspirations in the UK. You can see that from school, you go often do a uni degree.
Yeah.
And then how do you get from that point to working at House of Blues?
Yeah. So me and my buddy Ed, we in our time in Leeds studying, we met a guy called Bruce Wood, who's a producer and engineer in Leeds, and he was really the one that told us about Nashville. Like, we didn't really know how, we were honestly unaware of the powerhouse industry that is Nashville in the way that it is,
So Bruce is I've done a record. He's mixed the record that I played.
Oh, cool.
I played on once, and we went to his house, and he just makes me. He's a bit kooky and a bit. I think of him as a bit of like a Yodery type guy.
Yeah. Is he still in the house that's the studio?
I've got no idea. It's been years. I mean, I'm talking
like
15, 16 years ago that I met him.
The word is that house that is his studio was like Brian Eno once lived there or something. That's the tale that has been told. So it's got this musical history.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bruce was saying I went on holiday with my family and we were just walking down Music Row and people just let you come in and check out a studio, which is absolutely true. And then he's like, yeah, I mean, we even went in one place and the engineer hadn't shown up. So they asked me if I could stay and I ended up engineering a session.
What? That's ludicrous.
Yeah. So So that kind of put Nashville like in our minds.
Yeah.
And when we were kind of halfway through our third year, we were like, me and my buddy Ed were both thinking what we were going to do. I think we'd both done I did a little thing, like a little interny thing down in London for a studio, and Ed had done the same thing for a different studio, and they've been good, but very like short term, kind of like high buy, here's some experience. And we wrote to studios all over the world, but Nashville was now included thanks to Bruce. And it was funny, if you put recording studio into Google Maps over Nashville, and the city just turns red with all the little like red like pins. So yeah, we just wrote to places. And I think importantly, we did our research when we wrote to places. We didn't copy one email. It wasn't a mass spammy style. Like, I think this is me. Like, you can just tell when someone sends you an email and it's like, I'm basically blind copied on this,
This is a really important point. Just to reiterate it, like if there's young people listening to this who are wanting to do that, the temptation, we're humans, we want to be lazy and be efficient. And the temptation is to have a copy and paste email, and maybe you change a little bit of it. You can tell, you smell it instantly, and just do the work.
And the easiest thing to do is to not let you do any of the copying, even if because you obviously are going to end up writing basically the same thing a lot of times. But if you make yourself write each one, you're gonna stumble across some things you wouldn't have thought of separately, and then also importantly, you're gonna be able to weave in whatever you've learned about who you're writing to, just naturally into the message. And there was a few people we really wanted to connect with. Probably the top of that list was Vance Powell, who was doing all of the Jack White, all the Third Man Record stuff, which super inspirational to us. So we the way I kind of remember it is that say you write 20 emails to London and 20 emails to Nashville, you might get like 2 or 3 responses from London. In Nashville, you'll probably get like 18, 19 responses. Wow. Like even if people are saying like, hey, thanks for reaching out, but we're really not interested, or we don't really do that kind of thing, or whatever it might be. Even if it's that kind of response, people just kind of write you back. So we could tell, like, if we're going to take a shot on a place, one, Nashville has the greatest, like seemingly the healthiest music industry, like in the world left in a concentrated space. And all these people seem really open. So yeah, it was like the Easter holiday of our final year. Me and my buddy Ed, we went out there just to kind of meet people and kind of follow up on these emails that we'd sent. And genuinely, to our surprise, like we basically got to just pick where we went. Like basically everyone we met was kind of down for us to. They were like, if you can sort it out, if you can kind of figure out the visa that you need, and you can be here, and you can do, you can sort all that stuff out, just come on over.
What does that say about how open Nashville is, but also how closed the UK is? Makes me feel a bit disappointed that wasn't what came from the UK side of things.
Yeah. I mean, I remember having some really like negative, brief but still negative phone conversations with studios in the UK, just like treating like, I mean, you can't hide who you are. It's like I was a 20-year-old kid who super green, just like asking, do you do work experience? And some of the negative attitudes towards that here in the UK is, it's probably, I mean, it's a long time ago now. It's probably changed.
Well, I hope so. Yeah. But, I mean, it's not to put a particular downer on certain studios. I just feel as though we could. I mean, we kind of discussed it before we started recording. That the mentality of we're in a big community together. We're all on the same team. That seems to be my kind of overriding thought of when you're talking about how open Nashville is. It's like no one. What we were saying earlier about there's no competition. It's just like look, we're all just here doing it. You know, there's better to be one of 20 studios in a place where there's loads of music than an isolated studio in a place where there's not much. And it just makes me. I want to create. I want to help be part of the change in the UK that is that. I like to think that's what we're moving towards. You know, maybe Britain's just a bit too like, we've got a great music scene and we don't. I don't know. Or that we have this thing about needing to have like loads of adversity before we. I wrote to loads of studios and I never got a response, and then I finally got one, and it was the one that my career took off. But I don't know. Just it's something so heartwarming and lovely about the idea that you were embraced in Nashville. So
and people were so excited about it, which is like just kind of blew us away. So like I said, we were in a very fortunate position where we could kind of pick what we could do, and we ended up. So House of Blues owned the building that Vance's studio was in, so we kind of came up with the idea of we could both intern at both places, and we'd have like the big commercial facility getting major artists, lots of different major artists coming in, and then we'd have a more like one-on-one experience at Sputnik, which was Vance's studio. And that's kind of what we did, because it was all under the like House of Blues bracket. Okay. So we came home and we graduated, and then we both went our separate ways to go do a couple jobs for. We were allowed to have a student visa within 12 months of graduating. Yes. So we had basically until that time we had enough time to kind of go home, go live at mum and dad's house and put all of our pennies away. Yeah. And then, we saved up enough money to go there for 6 months and work for free, which is amazing, really. Like, I think about it now, it's like, that was kind of what opened everything up, And it's the kind of mad stuff you do when you're in your like early 20s. You don't have any kind of sense of like, I don't know, risk. We were there and I think we'd planned 4 days to give us time to get everything we needed. And when I say everything we needed, we needed to sort out our like social security numbers and stuff, because that unlocks the ability to get like a bank account and a car and all that stuff. And then we obviously needed to get a bank account and a car and somewhere to live. So I think we had 4 days to do that, and somehow we did it. There was a few like really amazing, just like random connections that we'd met. There was a friend of a friend in Sheffield that had spent some time in Nashville, and he knew another lady that was originally from Sheffield, and she was like still living there, and she was a songwriter, and she kind of really looked after us, and we'd booked our original like week stay. We'd booked to stay in this like what I now know is a very like dangerous motel in like the worst part of town possible. And when we sent Lorna our details, she was like, you can't stay there. You need to either stay with me or stay somewhere else. So like we like dodged things there, and met some very kind, generous people on the way, which is just what happens when you're in Nashville. And I do remember we had very mixed experiences between our two like internships, between like the time that we spent at House of Blues and the time we spent with Vance. Where in Vance's room there was another producer, an engineer in that, who had a studio within Sputnik called Mitch Dane. So when we were in there, we were literally assisting on whatever Vance and Mitch were doing. We were the assistant engineers immediately, no matter how little we knew. Which we quickly learned that it didn't, our degree had not prepared us to be an assistant engineer. Yeah.
So how does that sort of manifest? Like if you're assisting on something that's well, say you're making an error, presumably that kind of good good nature extends to a little bit of wiggle room in terms
A
of
little
you making
bit, yeah.
errors.
Especially when you are literally the bottom of the totem pole. I think that quite quickly you get to a position in your career where mistakes need to be very few and far between. You know what I mean? But yeah, when you're first starting, the vast majority of people are going to give you a little bit of. It's kind of on them to show you, not to assume that you know stuff. You know,
and obviously you've got to pull up and kind of go like, you know, you can't. You have to learn.
yeah. There has to be space to learn, so the vast majority of people that we'd worked with, and absolutely Vance and Mitch would be part of this, and then the vast majority of people that we ran into at House of Blues kind of extended that grace. I think people kind of just know where you're at, so they know kind of what responsibilities to immediately give you. There's a little bit of, you know, you got to do some faking it till you make it. You absolutely, like, that's essential. If you're not willing to kind of like do that, then you're going to find it really difficult to kind of progress. And someone says, hey, do you know how to do this? You just kind of need to say yeah and figure it out. In certain circumstances, I'll leave that to, you know, individuals. We can all kind of assess when we can kind of take that risk and not. But
oh man, I think we're all there. Like I think almost everybody is doing that to some degree, whether we all want to admit it or not. You just almost get used to, that being in that uncomfortable thing of, and rather than it stops being faking it and starts being like, well, I can definitely work that out. And that's almost like the qualification. It's like, I haven't done that before, but I think I know basically what to do.
And then you know, quite quickly, if you put yourself in, if you put yourself out there and you're working around people that are experienced, you quickly gain the knowledge of, I might not know exactly what I would do on my own back, but I know what they would do, so I'm just going to do that. And I think that the willingness to kind of just learn what someone else does and be willing to, this is my starting point. It's kind of like when you're, as a musician, just like learning covers. It's like you kind of figure out this is what they've done, you know? Sorry, I'm lost.
Just to move. Well, you were talking about learning underneath, Vance and Mitch. But I mean, just on the point that you were saying then about learning covers. So you're learning specific techniques on sort of engineering techniques based around what specific producers or other engineers do, and presumably you're working under so many, daily new people are coming to the studio who want things done in a slightly different way. And that's kind of exciting. So you're getting the whole breadth of, just staring at a drum kit. So like, this guy wants a mono overhead and this guy wants Glyn John's technique. And that's what you're getting the experience of what all of those different sounds are, what they afford in the session. And then, before you can even, you're not even in a position at the moment to start making those decisions yourself. So you're not really thinking about how that applies to you. You're just going like, okay, cool, this is what that sounds like. And then the next day it's something different. And
and I think that in an ideal world, you get a bit of both. In an ideal world, you'll be in a scenario where you get to see lots of different ways of working. And you'll also have experience one-on-one with someone or a group of people that work a certain way. And you can kind of go kind of an extra layer deeper in that way of working. So I think about it with, there was an engineer who he would mix all the time in House of Blues Studio B, and he was there all the time. So that quite quickly went from a kind of surface level, this is what he's doing, to being able to kind of dive in and see again and again, this is like he's kind of doing these same things on these mixes, or this is what he's doing differently in here, and this is kind of how he's doing that. So having something like that alongside all the different ways in which someone, like lots of different people would work, and kind of being able to marry that together, I think that puts you in a really good stead. Because if you only get one, you essentially become the affordable version of whoever you're working for, which is where a lot of people start that way for sure.
Yeah.
Or you know lots of different ways, but you've never gone deeper, you know. But initially, our experience at the two different studios was House of Blues. We were interns. We were doing lunch runs. This is pre-Uber Eats, Deliveroo. So every lunch, every coffee run, that's what we were doing. We were like taking out the trash and cleaning up, and we were the assistants. So we were like setting up mics and stuff like that. But like I said, at Sputnik, we were just immediately like running Pro Tools and running tape machines and doing recalls for mixers and things like that.
What was it like working? I mean, Vance is such a big name, and he's worked on so many records that we listen to, and that must have been, you must have been kind of couldn't believe your luck and a bit kind of. I don't know quite the word to use. It's not necessarily starstruck, but like, I can't believe we're working under this guy. But then quite quickly, what was it like working under him, and what did you learn?
Yeah, I think that it was very much, I think being the age that we were, you just take it for granted just the right amount, that you don't let it affect you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you don't have the perspective to understand just like what a bit, like I do remember us kind of looking at each other being like, we get to do this now, you know. This is what we're doing. So we did recognize it, but it wasn't like crippling in the way that it could be if it was like, oh, like, this is my one shot, you know. And I think from Vance in particular, Vance was all about tape, and he was all about making decisions, and he was all about so he was very anti a lot of what we saw at House of Blues, which was often lots of different options, not too much on the way in, like just kind of like good gain staging and like maybe like gentle on like EQ and compression. And Vance is very much the opposite of that. Is like, I'm mixing this now. You know what I mean? Like the band are playing it and I'm mixing it now. And then actually getting to like watching mix. He's very much the carve it out, make it quite drastic. Like sometimes when you would hear things in isolation, it would be kind of mind blowing that that's in the mix. You know, it's like, what is that sound? You know, in isolation it makes no sense, but like in the mix, it really serves the purpose. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and also Vance is just like naturally a very opinionated person when it comes to gear and sounds and music, and kind of realizing that that's kind of the position you need to take. Because I mean, essentially, like the job of a recording engineer and the job of a record producer is just making decisions. Yeah, you know, so you have to be able to make decisions and stick to them. You know.
Yeah.
So I think learning that from Vance was really good, and I think the decision, the whole like ethos of. Also, the whole tape thing was interesting because it was at a time when, like UA, I don't know when UA was first doing their like proper plug-in stuff, but I think it was before then.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I got my tape machine 4 or 5 years ago,
right?
And that was probably on the cusp of when everybody was doing it.
Yeah.
So I don't really remember it being a thing back when I was at college.
Yeah.
So you must have had. I mean, I'm assuming you didn't have much experience at tape. They don't have tape machines at college, I know.
Yeah, no, not like a proper tape machine for sure, and not like a 2-inch multi-track. But it was. I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, let's record on tape because it sounds a certain way." And to be fair, that was probably true then. I think these days, it's if all you're after is the sound, you might as well just use a plug-in.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's that if that's all you're after. But even back then, like the whole workflow of working on tape is why you do it.
Yeah.
It forces you to make decisions. The band are working harder, the engineer's working harder. We've got a limitation on us, and that's the whole. That seems to be like a lot of Jack White's approach, certainly in those years. The benefit of imposing limitations on yourself.
It's counterintuitive, isn't it? That you think limitations would restrict creativity, but it actually has the opposite effect.
Yeah, I think it formed. I think it formed a lot of my like idea of what was. Like I remember when I first started getting hired to like engineer, just like country stuff over at House of Blues or whatever. I would just naturally bus certain things together, and for some people that was like a whoa, you bust your kick drum mics together, and it's just like, well, that's like that's not even the half of it, you know what I mean? Like you'd like, well, let's bust the drums to a track, which you don't need to. And like I was saying earlier, sometimes you're just hired to do a job, and you can like that's totally fine. Like there's not a lot of room for ego, about silly things like that. But I just naturally like, it kind of that gave me the mindset of if I'm going to do these things, I'm going to do them for a reason. I'm not just going to do them because I don't know, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
It looks better if you've got more stuff. So I think like overall like workflow stuff was really kind of more than anything like specific like technical like techniques. It was more just like the approach to recording. And
was there, I mean, in terms of the technical things, was there any, I kind of thinking when people think of the technical sides of engineering, they're thinking like tape measures and that kind of stuff. And when I think back to the work I've done at, say, like Abbey Road, for example, it really struck me how untechnical they were. I mean, there was sort of an underlying knowledge of what needed to happen. There wasn't a tape measure in sight. It was very relaxed, let's put it that way. I was going to say slapdash, but it's not. It's slapdash is too far, but it's somewhere. It certainly wasn't. You could tell if something was out of phase, and fix it. But no one was kind of like agonizingly checking phase between everything or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that it's one of the things where an understanding goes a really long way. But as far as like measuring every single mic to a certain place, or I've never ever been on board with like time aligning stuff. Every time I've either witnessed it or done it, I've always thought it just kind of like makes it sound weird. I don't know. I just don't really get it. Like I'll measure my like snare drum to my overheads. And that's about it, And then not with a tape measure, just like with a cable, Like the technical aspect from someone like Vance is more just the way that he understands the electronics of something. So like he has a good like understanding of electrical engineering. So I think that gives him the ability to understand why abusing or using a piece of gear in a certain way gives a certain kind of response. And I think that's probably the most valuable thing of understanding what is going on.
I've just read that article that Steve Albini wrote.
Which one?
I can't remember what the title of it is, but it was written years and years ago, like 25 years ago or something, about things that are wrong with the music industry. And one of them is engineers that don't understand how their gear works. And how important, already before we started recording, you have been talking about voltages in the gear that I've got in here. And like how important is that side of things? I think people will be surprised to hear you talking about that side of it. That obviously it's a little bit of knowledge. It's like you're saying, if you know how a valve works, then you know how to abuse it and use it.
I think with me it is very much just like a little bit. You know what I mean? I didn't do like an electrical engineering kind of science degree or that, but I have picked up stuff And part of it is, it might have been like day one of interning for Vance. He kind of sat me down and was like, so have you made music before? You've recorded music? I was like, yeah. And he was like, so why has an XLR got 3 pins? And I like couldn't answer him. He was like, this is my beef with recording schools, is that like, you don't know what a balanced signal is, but you've made a record. You know what I mean? And he wasn't having a go at me. He was just like, this is a fundamental thing that we need to understand.
Yes.
Another thing that someone else told me, which I always found really like helpful, is audio is just an AC waveform, and when you kind of get your head around that, it kind of helps understand everything. You know what I mean? It's just up, down, positive, negative, in the same way that you can kind of immediately apply an understanding of how a diaphragm moves to what a voltage would look like on a scope, to the positive and negative polarity of a piece of tape, to how then a speaker moves. You know what I mean? Like you kind of get that process. I think that, so like, basic understandings of that, and having the ability to kind of like play around with like building and fixing equipment and understanding like, I guess a really good one is microphones. Like you can, with a little basic understanding of how a condenser works, how a dynamic works, and how a ribbon works, you can quite logically understand how and why they sound different. So I think it's like, it's not just knowing what a condenser sounds typically is going to sound like compared to a dynamic, but just kind of going a little bit further and understanding why that is, like what's going on with the plates, what's going on like with a paper diaphragm. I think that just helps everything, like helps you kind of, I think that's the kind of thing where you start to then, it gives you the ability to like bend or break rules that have been like passed on to you. It's like, oh, everyone seems to use this mic for this source, but I think that would work well somewhere else. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of a good example now, but like, why some like dynamic kick drum mics actually sound pretty cool on vocals, you know what I mean? And like the EQ curve of that, or like just place it. It's just I don't know. That's a bad answer, but
well, the opposite's true. That, I mean, especially when from my perspective, when I've been building my studio up and the collection I've got, you buy what you can afford in the first instance, and I mean, I basically sent an email to producer friends of mine and said, if you had however much money I had, what would you buy? And I bought what they told me. And a lot of it is still what I use now. And because they told me the things that everybody has. And then some of it that I couldn't afford, I've had to put on ice. And then I've bought various things leading up to that thing. I mean, the RE20 that you're talking into is a great example. For whatever reason, I avoided buying an RE20 for years. And eventually I just bought one, and it was like, oh wow, that's the kick drum sound I've been chasing for like 8 years now. Why didn't I just buy that 8 years ago? So the flip side of what you're saying is also true, that there is a reason why some of these things are used. And I mean, I actually don't know why an RE20 sounds so good on kick. I just bought it and put it there. But I maybe I should go and find out. In fact, I definitely should after this conversation. But it's the same. The opposite is true, that there is a reason why that sounds, why those things are used, and then you can break those rules if you want to. So that it kind of works in both directions. No, I think that's kind of what it is. Also, RE20s are probably the greatest mic in existence. It's so much better. Like, it kind of annoys me that everyone loves SM7s when RE20s are so much better. But anyway, sorry, that's just my gripe. I guess we've been talking for a while. I'm kind of interested, before we wrap up, about, we kind of covered this sort of base of your experience, but presumably you got to work elsewhere and work under under so many other producers and work on other projects. Is there anything specific that springs to mind as like a particular point of learning or something that happened that was a particular, I don't know, point of interest of your time when you were over there?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it's something that I've already said, which was, like, good engineering just has to happen. And it was T-Bone Burnett that told me that. And it's kind of like thanks to him that I like basically have a career in a lot of ways, in the way that the very typical thing happened, which is that I was an assistant on a session, a few sessions that he was doing, and then eventually his engineer had to go back to LA or, you know, whatever, go do a different project, and the project overrun, and he was like, oh, well, Chris can take over. And then after that point, he started, like, when he was in Nashville, he would just book me in the studio for a lot of stuff. And there was this like period when I was kind of jumping between, like, sometimes I was assisting Mikey or Jason, and sometimes I'd just be the engineer, and session players and stuff would see me doing that, and then that would kind of give them the confidence to hire me to do other things. You know, it's like, well, he's kind of got this like stamp of approval.
Yeah.
That it's like always really stuck with me, this idea that like what we do just needs to happen. Like, I'm not kind of there to get in the way. And I think that extends itself into like both sonically what's happening and practically. So from a practical point of view, the engineer has a lot to do with how a session flows, how quickly we can kind of go from take to take, or how comfortable the musicians are. It's amazing how many musicians will kind of tolerate like a poor headphone mix and not saying anything.
Yeah, I've noticed.
And it's like you gotta either like press people to be like, you know, what, you hearing everything you need to hear, or like being able to check up on that, all the way up to like when you're capturing a sound. A lot of the time, the idea is like not to get in the way, and it's almost counterintuitive in the way that a lot of the stuff that we use is very colourful. Like the EQ curve of microphones is very colourful. The preamps that we use often add in colour, and sometimes what we're doing is we're like adding colour so that it sounds like what we think it's supposed to sound like, you know, but not kind of like not breaking stuff down just to rebuild it, just like preserving it, like giving it like a helping hand. So yeah, it's not really any like specific sessions as such, but it's more just kind of like like finding something that like resonates with you and you believe in, which I think with me was, I really kind of believed in, I kind of picked up all these things, whether it was, you know, Vance's like encouragement to make decisions and impose restrictions on yourself, or like T-Bone's advice to kind of like make sure things kind of like stay out of the way and just happen. And like things kind of, or like seeing engineers use the like not so cool gear in the room, and it turns out it actually sounds even better, you know, like picking up these like little nuggets along the way that kind of then form like an overall like ethos of how you work. And I think I see that now when I'm in a studio that is like set up, but I'm still in a process of picking out equipment and like building it, and kind of taking a fresh look at like what I like bring to the table as an engineer and as a producer, and being able to kind of almost like having like out of body experience and like see, okay, like let's clear out like anything that's like not a bad habit, but anything that like maybe you're just doing that just because you think you need to, but it turns out that's not what people want, or that's not what you need to be doing. And like having the ability to like stick to your guns on stuff, and something that I experienced here, like in the UK, and part of this is just working with musicians and artists with a little less experience, is that sometimes you're in, like, I'm hearing something and I'm assuming everyone else is hearing it, and that is intentional. But sometimes things that might feel obvious to you as the producer or the engineer might not be obvious, or might not be like speaking to the rest of the, like if you're working with a band, there's so many things that just kind of get like carried on through a song, or like that's just not quite working, but they're so close to the song they're not seeing it. Don't just assume that it's intentional because they're doing it every time. It's like having the ability to be like, hey, I think we should rethink that tag that we keep doing, or that I don't think that kick pattern is really complementary to the melody, you know? I think it's like finding that balance. The other thing that I found working here is often my job is to kind of find the balance between those, like the identity of an artist and what they do that's unique to them, and like preserving that, but kind of helping them shape songs and recordings so that it is I don't know, ready to be consumed by an audience, I guess. And it's like finding that balance. Like some people want you to just like, oh, I want to do a big pop ballad. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, cool. All right. Well, there's a bunch of rules that we can just like apply to this song now. Yeah. You know what I mean? But most people aren't. Most people are looking for like, this is what I do and this is what I sound like. But I know that there's something missing, or I know that I may be doing some things that don't quite make sense, or like sometimes it's like there's clearly too many syllables or lyrics in this verse. Is that an intentional part of like a creative, like is that part of the artist's identity, or is that something that we need to kind of like iron out, and like picking and choosing those things? And I think that's something that that I've really enjoyed getting to kind of like explore, but also it's been like a learning experience for me, because I think the easier thing to do is to assume that you need to be on one end or the other. You need to be like, oh, I'm here to kind of straighten all this out and make it sound big and clean and like what you expect, or they clearly know what they're doing, so I'm just here to just capture this, and it just let it be as avant-garde and as like uncomfortable as it is.
Well, to an extent, that's what you were doing in Nashville, because you were working in bigger studios and having pre-production that you probably weren't involved with, and then you're just there going, well, this is fully formed, and my job here is to capture it. And then coming back here, especially outside of London, there isn't the budgets, so you're forced to produce it, whether you like it or not.
So you go from being one part of a producer, artist, studio assistant, intern, to you are the studio, you are the engineer, you are the producer,
So you don't have a choice, and you know from your experience that, because you've essentially heard what somebody has fully formed routinely. That's been what you've routinely heard. So as soon as you hear something that's not fully formed, it's quite obvious, and that's quite. So you're kind of realizing your experience, and I think that what you said about being able to sort of gently speak up as to, are we all okay with this particular tag? Like, have we considered that? Because I rightly so. But I think it comes down to a bit of humility that when you're trying to sort of subvert your ego, you don't want to assume that someone doesn't know. You don't want to think, well, I know more than you, so I don't want to bring this up. You kind of you assume like they must have thought about that. And actually that isn't the case often. And there is, you'll know, there's a way to bring it up that isn't about like anyone being right or wrong. It's just that this is an aspect of the song that I think we need to discuss. It might be that it ends up being kept.
Yeah.
they have thought about, or maybe they haven't. In which case it can be got rid of, and it's for the positive. But yeah, I think it's interesting that you're right. That is kind of the way a studio is now. That even if now, I think there's the assumption. Well, I don't quite know the right ways to put it, but there is the lack of knowledge about how a studio runs. That I've been asked to quote unquote engineer a session where I'm quite clearly the producer on the session too.
Yeah.
And they don't know what an engineer is, and they don't really know what a producer is. They just know they need a person in the studio to make it work. And they've assumed there's been no discussion, but it's been assumed that I've got quite a lot of creative input.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting that we're having this conversation now, because literally last week, when I got coffee with an artist who I've worked with before a few times, and hoping to do something again, but they really want to like step things up sonically, and it was really good for me to experience it, because there's so much that I assumed that they knew that we were doing based on that we weren't doing based on budget. You know what I mean? And he literally was like, explain to me why there's normally a producer, an engineer, and an assistant in the room. I was like, oh yeah, because like he doesn't know. So I was like kind of explain to him like how it can take an entire brain to do just one of those tasks, really well.
With good reason.
With good reason. And but the way that we work, obviously for like within like budget restrictions, is that we kind of assign all that stuff to one person, and very often. And that was really helpful for me, because it was just like there's so much that I do it too. Like so much I assume that people kind of know. And the other thing too that I found really helpful is hiring other people to do creative things that you're not so familiar with. Mm-hmm. So not so much like I think I'm very used to working with session players, so not hiring musicians, but hiring a photographer to do something, hiring or a videographer to do something, and getting things back. And when you get things back and they're not what you thought they were going to be, it's like, oh, this is what it's like when I send a mix to someone, and it's like not what they thought it was going to be. This is the experience that they're having. Yeah. It's so valuable to kind of experience, like to be on that side of a creative process, so that I know like next time when I'm communicating about a mix, kind of like clarifying or being able to kind of like reassure people. It's like, oh yeah, don't worry, like that's just, we can just do these things, and that kind of like changes that or whatever. So yeah, that's just a bit of a list of things that
it's great. I was thinking,
resonated with me maybe.
Well, it's really interesting, because the two sections of your experience are really interesting. I'm personally excited that we've met and we're in quite close proximity, and I think this is an interesting conversation for people listening, because hopefully, I think we'll have a working relationship in the years to come, and that's exciting that you've had that experience and are improving. I'm a huge advocate for the north of England, and I think that it's exciting that we have more and more people who've got experience and this, mentality we've just been discussing around this, in this part of the country, and it's I'm excited about the projects that you're going to be working on, and what's going to be coming essentially based on the experience that you got in Nashville, because it's not it's cool that you kind of got to go over there and then sort of bring it all back here and do and take it where you want to take it from that point onwards, and sort of improve. It's all improving the sort of output of what happens here, isn't it?
Well, I hope so. Yeah, I think that there's like there's so much stuff that, like, it's just so nice being able to kind of be able to see both sides, to being able to like appreciate so much of what Nashville does like amazingly well. But it's also really, really sweet to be a part of like a scene that is largely people are just like super excited to, you know, they've like kind of pulled together, and the band they've got enough cash to like do, you know, a few days in the studio, and it's just like super like fresh and exciting for them, and being able to kind of be a part of that process with people, and like give them like a professional experience, but also give them like space to be creative. And it's kind of like just not being pretty like open-handed with like all of the experience and all of the different ways of working, and kind of celebrating the best of it. You know. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing it with us.
Thank you, dude.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to That Recording podcast today. I'll be back next week with more conversation all about analog recording. And for now, don't forget to hit subscribe, and please do share the podcast with friends or anyone else you think is as nerdy about recording as we are. If you'd like to follow me on socials, you can find the podcast on Insta at That Recording Podcast. For my adventures in Ringo nerdery and all things Beatles drums, it's at All You Need Is Drums. And if you're just curious about my work and recording, and maybe the odd picture of me having a beer or hanging out with my wife and kids, it's at Joe Montague Drums. And in other exciting news, I have a TikTok. I don't really know what TikTok does or is, but my wife says I need to have it and it's cool, and I should tell you about it. So there we are, follow me on TikTok. Don't be a stranger, and see you next week. Goodbye!